I'm going to get us started. It's 6:02, Thursday, January 27th, and we're starting our building level advisory committee meeting, newly reconfigured one. So I just want to welcome everyone. My name's Aura Russell-Better, and I'm the District 4 school board member in Portland. So it's wonderful to see familiar faces that I've met through the years working on the school bond project, and then seeing these projects get going, and then some new folks that I haven't met yet. So I'm really happy that we're all getting to join together for the 3 remaining schools to get renovated, Presumpscot and Reiche and Longfellow. So welcome everyone. I believe Pius Ali, I'm not sure if he'll be joining us. Have you spoken with him, Javier? But he's
I don't see him.
Okay, our city councilor co-chair, so hopefully he'll be joining. And I know that a couple of people said they'd be a little bit late, so I'll just be looking at the attendance in a little bit. Do you want me to go ahead and talk about the agenda a little bit, Javier, or would you like to speak more to?
Yeah, it's you're the chair. If you want to do it, if you want to turn it over to me, whatever you would prefer.
Okay. Yeah, this is exciting for me, everybody. My first meeting that I've gotten to chair as a board member, and I couldn't think of a better one for me to have this role with. So I'm really excited to get to be here. So if everybody got a chance to look at the agenda, we have, let me just pull it up here, an agenda that just kind of lays out what we're going to do today. So I didn't know, Javier, just about the new committee members, if that's a part that you wanted to.
So I think, I think that it's roll call primarily is, the place where you can meet. I think, it would be important to do that just so that everybody knows who's here. I can lay out a little bit of general context around the reconfiguration of the BLAC. I think we've communicated some of that in writing, but I think it might be worth taking a couple minutes to just, first of all, thank everybody for being here, for continuing to do this service to the school district that is, absolutely critical to our ability to advance the work that we're doing with the 4-school bond. What we've done, and the reason that you're all together as opposed to one's at 5, one's at 6, one's at 7, is that we are, we're well underway with the projects, not without, challenges and hiccups for sure. But, those, the 3 projects are, fully bid and are, fully permitted and operating. And so we really believe that the work that is happening in 3 unique buildings with 3 unique set of circumstances, including different contractors, but that they're all inextricably linked to each other, as they have been from the very beginning, when, it took members of all 4 of the school communities and many others throughout Portland to advance to the place where this went to referendum. But, while we were doing the planning work, it was important to have dedicated time looking at, what are the specific design considerations for, Longfellow, for Reiche, for Presumpscot, and for Reiche. And it made sense that the building level advisory committee was very specifically located at that level of connection to the buildings. Now, as we're fully designed, as we are, beginning to, actually operationalize all aspects of those designs, it's more important that everyone know how the entire project is going than that you focus specifically on the individual aspects of your project. So I think that is underlying why we brought the three committees together into one, as at the same time we're ending the LICEF building committee, since that project has seen its way all the way through to completion. So, we did ask every member of the building level advisory committees of the three Longfellow, Longfellow, Presumpscot, and Reiche, if they wish to continue. You all have said you did want to do that, and so we're incredibly grateful for that. And we're also incredibly grateful for the individuals who served up to this point and said, I think I'm good to not continue further. So, we've had some people leave, and we've had some, all of you continue to do that work. There are no new members, so there's no person that didn't previously serve in some capacity with a building level advisory committee that is now a part of this group. So, you would know each other within your groups, and now you'll have an opportunity to know each other from outside. The staff team is essentially the same as it's been. So, everybody on these calls has gotten to know the members of our staff, but as we go through roll call today, we'll make sure that everybody just identifies themselves as, where were they previously and what their role is at in that function. So, when we get to me, I'll be Javier Botana, superintendent, and just to ask everybody to do the same thing. So identify yourself as a staff person, or identify yourself as a community member, or an elected official. And then for our team to just identify what component, whether you're with Portland Public Schools or whether you're with CHA or with Harriman, and so that everybody can, sort of put that full picture together. I think that's all I think that's a general orientation to how we came to be as a group. And, then we obviously, I don't know, Aura, do you want me to walk through the agenda? Or do you want to do that? Or we did not really get a chance to rehearse very much. So.
Yeah, no, I can do that. And then should I just call roll for people to introduce?
I think that would be great. Yeah.
Okay, great. So our agenda is pretty straightforward here. It looks like, we'll start with introducing new members, and then we're going to just look over the permit status. So we'll be hearing from our Harriman staff and CHA, and I'm sure PPS staff will jump in too, and then go through project impacts and next steps discussion. And I'll just throw in here that I'll just invite people to use the raise your hand feature. We'll have opportunities throughout to ask questions. So that will just help me pay attention to who's in queue to ask questions, and we'll have lots of opportunity for that. So I think that's about it. And we're not going to do minutes today because we don't have minutes from this newly reconstituted group, but usually we have to do our minutes. So I think I'll just go ahead and maybe from each school group, just ask everybody to just say hello, introduce yourself. I think that would be really helpful to just, folks that we haven't got to meet each other across the schools. This is a good opportunity. So I'm just going to look at my list here and just ask Reiki folks if, actually, no, let me find my little attendance list here. Does anyone from Reiki want to just say hello? Ted and Lori?
Hello, I'm Ted Hummel, one of the lead teachers at Reiki School, and I guess, yes, I'm on the school side. Thank you.
I'm Lori Babinski. I'm one of the lead teachers at Reiki also, so great to be here.
And then
I'm Lauren. I'm a community member. My oldest is in first grade, and we have two others entering Reiki in the next couple of years.
Oh, great. Thanks, Lauren. Welcome.
My name's Matt Peters. I'm also a community member and have two children at Reiki.
Hi, Matt. Great.
And I'm Jeremy Dean, and I have two kids, one at Reiki now in third grade, my daughter Ushi, and my son Clem is in at King now. So, and I'm a parent and committee member.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Figdor. I'm the school board chair. I'm not actually an official member of this committee, but I'm the former co-chair of the Reiki building committee, and hard for me not to listen in and participate, so I'm in just in the background. And thank you everyone for stepping up and continuing to serve. We are so reliant on your expertise as a staff member, as a community member, and are really appreciative of your work, especially throughout the pandemic. So thank you so much, everyone. And I'm here but off camera, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Chair. So how about Longfellow folks? I know Terry's here.
I am Terry Young. I'm the principal. Nice to see everyone.
Great.
Hello, I'm Holly Johnson, assistant principal and literacy coach at Longfellow. Great to see everybody.
Hi, I'm Luke. I'm one of the community members of the Longfellow committee.
I'm Bill Dodson. I'm a community member. I have two kids go through Longfellow, and I just had an opportunity to get involved in something like this at the local level.
Thank you. Is that everybody from Longfellow?
Hi, I'm Jeff Levine.
Hi, Jeff.
That's all right. That's all right. I was off camera because I'm cooking. I'm a community member for the Longfellow group. I'm really excited to be here. I had two kids go through Longfellow who are both older now, but I'm really glad to be on this larger group. This is really exciting.
Awesome. Thanks. Yeah, it's wonderful to have folks who do still have kids in the school building that may get to see these projects be done, but also the people who have the history there. So it's wonderful that we have such a breadth of experience in the schools represented here. Great. All right. And then we have Presumpscot, my school community, let's see, how about our leader, Angie?
Hi, I'm Angie Taylor, principal for Presumpscot.
All right.
I'll hop in. I'm Emily Hurley. I am the literacy coach at Presumpscot, and I am also a parent of two children at Reiki school.
Hi, I'm Liz LaPierre, and I'm a community member. I'm a parent of two kids at Presumpscot, a second grader and a fifth grader.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm a parent of a second grader and future kindergartner.
Thanks, Sarah.
I think Laura.
I am a community member and a parent of a kindergartner and a second grader at Presumpscot.
All right, thank you. Did we get everybody from Presumpscot?
Yep. And then maybe we can move over and do the staff team. So how about if I just call off the list and then you can just say if you're, what your organizational affiliation is. So Doug Sherwood.
Yes, good afternoon, evening, everyone. Doug Sherwood, Portland Public Schools Facilities. These are my 5th, 6th, and 7th major projects in my 20 years here with the system. Had hoped to stay with them for their actual evolution and realization, but I've opted to retire in about a month's time. So I hope to continue to add insights until that day and maybe be, supportive anyway I can after that time. Have a good night.
Thank you, Doug. Henry, are you there?
Yes, I am here. I'm here. I have it blocked. I run the TV station for the Portland Public Schools.
Thanks, Henry. Steve?
Steve Stolfin, Portland Public Schools, Director of Facilities and Operations.
Awesome. Thank you. Emily Waugh?
Hello, everyone. I'm Emily. I'm with Harriman. You've all gotten millions of emails from me at this point. We're familiar.
Lisa.
Good evening. I'm Lisa Sawin, architect at Harriman, and have had the pleasure of being with many of you since the Lyseth project.
And Mark Lee.
Thank you. Yeah, Mark Lee, an architect with Harriman as well. Doug, we're going to miss you.
And then Jeffrey.
Jeff Birnbaum with CHA. We're the owner, project managers representing the Portland Public Schools.
And Laura.
And I'm Laura Jolly, also with CHA, representing the Portland Public Schools.
And then Greg Buzier, you also receive a million emails from, Greg, you are there. Great.
Yes, hi, thank you. I'm Greg Buzier. I'm an IT technician for the Portland Public Schools. I manage the Zoom meetings for the school board and post them on Facebook.
Excellent. So I think those are all the introductions, Laura.
All right, great. So looks like we should get started on the agenda to talk about the permit status.
Great. And we're going to turn this over to the Harriman team to lead us through that.
Very good. I think everyone can see the screen here. All right, and we'll roll through. This is the agenda that Chair Russell Better talked about. So we're going to bring everyone up to speed on the status of the permits and what's evolved from the last time that we met as smaller groups. We'll talk also right now, there's been delays in getting the permits, and that's caused some delays in getting some of the construction activities off and running to the full speed that we need them to be at. And so we'll talk a bit about where that process is, and that's going to be kind of a dense conversation. We'll try to make it as informative as we can, and certainly bring folks up to speed with it's kind of a lot of jargon that digs into construction contracts. And so, and Jeff from CHA will help us with that conversation. We'll talk about some of the costs associated with the changes brought about by the permit review, and sort of where we are right now with our understanding of the impacts to the schedules. So with that, Lisa Solon is going to share with us our current status of permits.
Excellent. Thank you, Mark. We were also reflecting on next time we'll include some construction photos because there is work going on all three projects and it's very exciting. So apologies for not having that in this slide deck. But the good news is the building permits have all been received on Longfellow, Reiche, and Presumpscot. So we have building permits in hand with conditions, which is typical for permits, and are aware of what those are and continuing to move forward with those. And so I think the last time we met, we were still waiting on the Presumpscot building permit, but had the foundation permit. So we're happy to report on having all of those in hand at this time.
I'll pause for a minute before we move from this topic, just to see if there are any questions. If not, then we'll move on.
The conditions, when we talk about the new work, those will get covered, I'm assuming.
The new work, so the conditions are essentially things that they put on the permit that we need to follow through with, whether it be making sure that we follow through and just different things that are listed in that. That's not necessarily the new work. The new work was brought about through the process of addressing their comments and how the ultimately the permits were obtained. Conditions on the permit are not part of this conversation.
Very good. All right, I'll move to the next one, which is the project impacts and the next steps. And so with respect to the project impacts, we're going to go through some definitions. And as I said, Jeff Birnbaum from CHA, the owner's representative on the project, is going to kind of give us a grounding of what some of these concepts are and some of these terms that we're going to be using are. So Jeff?
Yeah, thank you. It actually be Laura that's going to take this, and I'll chime in as needed and necessary.
Great. Excellent, Laura. Take it away.
Okay, so as Lisa mentioned, just with the status of each of the projects, we have been delayed on really getting into the construction in earnest. So what that means is there's two things that we just really wanted to cover that that we've come across to date. And the first thing is new work. And so what we wanted to cover what that means. So what this means is that when Harriman or an architect puts together their set of drawings and compiles that into a for construction set, it goes out to bid and the contractors bid on that. And that is the baseline scope. The lowest bidder is awarded the project, and that's their contract. Any changes after that become what we're calling as new work. And new work can come from unforeseen conditions in the field with existing buildings like this. It can come from owner driven programmatic changes or design changes. But in this case, that's not what has happened. It can also come out of the permit review process. So in each of the projects through this permit review process, there's been new work added, and there's a cost and schedule impact to that. So we will go into that a little bit more. We've got a few slides here to give some more detail on that. But then the other thing, the other definition, if we go to the next slide, is because the projects are delayed from their original start dates, each contractor has the right to put in a delay claim. And so what that means is that when we bid out the project, there was a schedule that was set and phasing for each of the schools, with Presumpscot's phasing being the easiest one. But each school had phasing and milestones, and as the construction gets delayed, then those phases and milestones have to be adjusted. Staffing has to be looked at again, and the projects, of course, also move out further with their turnover dates. So what the delay claim means is a time and money impact, and it can also have other impacts, which are we can be more into the winter seasons and incur additional costs from working in the winter. There can be material escalation prices that come into play. So there's a lot of things that can factor into that delay claim cost. And then one of the big main items in delay claim is the general conditions, which I think is on the next slide. General conditions, what it means is this is standard terminology in the industry, but it means the contractor's staff time and their labor, just basically the time for their people. And that's a big factor in the cost of a delay claim. Is, we had an original schedule with these people on board, and as that schedule moves out, those people still need to be engaged throughout the project and bring it to completion. So that's where the general conditions comes into the delay claim. Yes, Laura?
It sounds like, at least for the Presumpscot project, that it's going to go longer. What does that mean for the portables being there and being used right now until the addition is done?
Mm-hmm. So the portables will need to be used longer on each of the projects as their schedules move out. And I think we've got an upcoming slide also on just the feedback that we've gotten from each of the three contractors on what the schedule impact is looking like. So we can show that in an upcoming slide.
Do you maybe want to go to that slide or
Sure. So this is the feedback that we've gotten from each of the contractors. It's also what they give us for their timeframes and their delay is also something that is vetted by the team. So it's not necessarily, it has to be reviewed and proven out that schedule delay is what we agree with is reasonable, can be justified with where we are with the construction. So for Longfellow, we're looking at a 4-month delay going to December of 23, and then 1 month in the summer for doing the earthwork at the portables. And then Reiche, we're still in the process, really, we're having conversations with that contractor about their schedule implications. And then Presumpscot, we're looking at 5 months. They've indicated January 2023, but we are pulling that back to the turnover at the Christmas break of 2023, not 2024. Oh, sorry, 2022.
Does anyone else have questions at this point? Bill, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, thanks. How was that month achieved, or that, what's the thinking on cutting that month out, going faster? How was that achieved on, what was the third school, Reiki?
On the one for Presumpscot. It was really just, they had the schedule going in, I think about like 11 days into January. So it was totally, within reach to peel it back to December.
Maybe just to give a little bit more detail, when a construction schedule is derived, it's based upon a 5-day work week, Monday through Friday. And so with 11 days to recover in a total schedule, there's a possibility to go to what's called a 6-day work week, where the crews would work on a Saturday. Another component and a way to make up that time is to go to what's called a shift and a half. So instead of working from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., they're working from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., shift and a half. And that money spent on that shift and a half would be for only those items that are considered critical path. Critical path is the point within the schedule. It's like an inflection point that you get to a certain point in the schedule and you can't do anything else unless work is completed, meaning you can't close up the walls until all your electrical within the walls is completed. So that's why we feel quite confident, as does the contractor, that we should be able to peel that back, including inspections and approvals from the city, to a turnover Christmas break 2022.
I don't see any other questions, Laura, if you want to keep going. Oh,
okay, so
just kidding. Sorry. Do you mind just waiting a second? I see Emily's hands up. Go ahead, Emily.
Sorry, this is just a, I think, quick follow-up. So I see that Longfellow has a month in the summer for, it sounds like, removal of the portables. So when would Presumpscot's portables be removed? Would that be sometime in January after students have been transitioned to classrooms, or?
Probably January. So we could then, I guess we can move into, we've got more of a breakdown here on the first definition of Newark Costs. We've got a breakdown from each of the contractors for the 3 schools. Longfellow and Presumpscot are numbers that have been presented by the contractors with the subcontractor backup. Reiki is lagging behind the other two schools. We have an estimate, a high-level estimate from them, but we don't have the subcontractor backup at this point, which that backup just, it provides all the validation of the overall number. So for each of these schools, so this is just a snapshot of what that new work looks like to date. We do have also, we can go into, and Harriman can give a little bit more explanation on each school, exactly what the scope is of the new work for each school. We've got slides on that.
Great, thank you, Laura. I'll pause for a second here before we go into that, if there's any questions on that last bit of information, or this is actually an expansion of that information. So may also bring up questions. But as Laura mentioned, this is an itemization of the new work that's been presented as a result of largely the permitting review, and so and the biggest areas really that we were sort of the last component of discussions with the City of Portland permitting involved the determination of the number of toilet fixtures, and so that's largely what we're looking at here. Are a lot of costs associated with the determination and some modifications to the toilet rooms, and so drywall is sometimes it's the framing and the wall board that's put up on walls and sometimes on ceilings, and so there's a component of that. Toilet and bath accessories, that's the actual toilet fixtures and lavatories. And so that, and then the accessories are all of the toilet paper dispensers and mirrors and grab bars and things like that. So that's what that figure comes in at. Ceiling work is acoustic tile ceiling, so it's the lay-in ceilings that we do. Glazing is glass, and so oftentimes that's glazing that we put in, sometimes in indoors or in we call barred lights, the window inside windows, and sometimes it's also on the exterior when we put a glazing film on a window, for instance. So that's associated with that. Plywood, clearly, I think it's a hard wood product for mounting accessories and things that go sometimes behind walls. And then there's painting and mechanical scope, which mechanical is the ventilation systems that we've talked about many times. But so that itemization from the contractor, what they do is they submit those costs to us and they break it down from there. The general contractor collects the cost from the subcontractors, the plumbers and electricians and drywallers, and then they put that forward and they add on their costs associated with those changes, and then they submit that to the owner, and Harriman and the owner review those costs and vet them to determine if they are reasonable for the work that's being performed. And sometimes there's a negotiation or further backup information is required for us to be able to validate what those costs are. And once we validate those costs, and then we roll that into a change to the contractor for the cost of that work. And so this was the new work known today for Longfellow. And I'll pause for a moment before we move to the next one.
Matthew, did you have a question?
No, it was about what was causing the new work, or further scoping down the new work. So this is good. It's just about the permit review. That was helpful. Thank you.
Okay. And I see, Luke, you have a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just was hoping you'd go a little bit deeper into the mechanical, if you don't mind. Like what raised the cost there?
Yeah, and go ahead, Lisa. Yeah, oh, we can't hear you, Lisa.
Bring my microphone down. So I think it's essentially a mechanical and plumbing number in there. And so some of it is the reworking of plumbing itself. And there was modifications to the actual room layouts. So that's what you're seeing in that number.
Is that in the bathrooms then?
Any other questions on this?
Sure. This is Jeff with CHA. I just want to comment that, and maybe Mark, you may have just mentioned it and I missed it. We get these numbers from the subcontractors and from the contractor, and then we vet them. We question them. If we get a lump sum number, meaning if we just got a number that said 25,636, that's not acceptable to us. We require a labor breakdown by foreman, by laborer, by supervisor. We request a materials breakdown. And then if there is a big chunk of money, let's say controls, which we have actually in Presumpscot, we actually want to see the backup from the control company. And so we don't take these numbers at face value and say 46 grand, that's what it is. We questioned it. So currently happening is vetting the credits as well. And we overlay what the original bid set was, what we bought, against what the changes are. And then we discuss what the appropriate values are for credits, even though we may not have the unit pricing from the original statement of values, the values that were originally presented to us by the GC that they were awarded the work. We still want to make sure that the credits are fair going back to the owner. That process is happening as we speak.
Great, thank you, Jeff. So we'll move to the costs for Reiche. In terms of the scope for Reiche, there are really three items that are driving that. Similar to Longfellow, we have the conversation about the requisite number of plumbing fixtures in the building and how they are determined. And we found same in the way we found resolution to that at Longfellow was also applied to Reiche as well. So that was one item, the modifications to the toilet rooms. The second one was the opening at the center of the building that sometimes is referred to, and I'll use a word in quotes, atrium, but it's that opening above the library or at the library between the first level and the second level. And so that was one area of discussion with the city prior to the issuance of the permit. And then the last one had to do with the addition that we put onto the front of the building and the degree to which it required it to be a separated addition due to area limitations that the building can only be so big given the size of given the construction of the building itself. So those are the three drivers of the new work for Reiche. As Jeff mentioned, when we get a cost and we need to validate that cost. And so right now we are working with the contractor to get all of the backup that we need to be able to validate what those costs are. And so that process is still ongoing with the contractor for Reiche. And I'll pause for a minute here before we move to the next one.
Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, on this one, we have this 225 hypothetical number here once the costs actually come in. But how much of that is around the permitting with the city? First part, how much of that roughly? Is it a lot? Is it a little? And and is that cost? I mean, was this permitting cost issue preventable, or is it a pretty normal to be expected part of the permitting step? Thanks.
Sure, absolutely. So I'll take the first pass at it, and certainly others from the team, please join in. But the first question, or the answer to the first question, Bill, is this a result of the permit review? And yeah, those three items were a result of the permit review. And is it something that's expected or anticipated? Sometimes I would say generally with older buildings or renovations, yeah, there is an element of, and I'll use the word code interpretation. You can look at building codes and you can evaluate them in different ways. And so I think we worked to really come to an understanding with the City of Portland's permitting review staff to really understand what their opinions are about that and provide them with our interpretation. Ultimately, they're the ones issuing the permit. They're what we call the authority having jurisdiction. They're the ones that really are responsible to issue that permit. And so while we can present our opinion about what we think the code reads and how we interpret that, and we not only as the architects or the designers at Harriman, but we also have on this project we actually have a fire protection engineer that has assisted us in that evaluation. And so that some of that is likely anticipated with when you get into an existing building, and it's more so than a new construction, because new construction is fairly straightforward and there's not a lot of gray area. It's got to be this because that's what the code reads. So I'll pause for a minute here, and if others want to provide any other response to that.
I don't know that this is response, but just maybe underscoring. I think as part of the work, Harriman was hired as the architects and engineers on the project. So when they put together the specifications that we sent out to bid, it was everybody's understanding that those were compliant with codes. And so I think that's Mark's point, is that it's a code interpretation. And so, I think that there's always an expectation that some of that may happen. But clearly we didn't go into it thinking, let's design something that isn't up to code and then have them see if they catch it.
It makes sense. Yeah. Thanks.
Were you all set, Bill, with your question?
Yes. Thanks.
Okay, great. And Matthew, I see you have your hand up.
I just wanted to follow up on Bill's comment or in Mark's answer. I would say that this is stuff, that would have been included in the bid anyway. So it's actually work that it's not extra work, or it's not. I mean, it is new work, but only in the fact that it should have been in the documents to begin with. And so I do want to point out for everybody that had we gone out to bid with the set that showed this work in it, the bids would have been higher. So maybe not one for one higher, because there is CHA can probably talk a little bit about this, but we lose the opportunity for competitive pricing essentially on the new work. But just so people don't kind of nitpick too much about the addition of all of this cost and work, it's stuff we would have had to buy anyway. Just to clarify some of that.
Yeah, it's an excellent point, Matt, that the idea that so a scenario where somehow we were to have been able to understand the city's interpretation prior to assembling the bid set, it would have been priced into the project. So it's an excellent point.
Okay, I see Jeremy, I see your hands up. I'm just going to quickly read. I see a question in the chat. I'm just going to read from Liz. It says, do these new work costs impact the overall budget for the 3 schools? Do these new work costs take any discussion of alternatives off the table?
Yeah, I'll start, and others please continue to chime in. So I think at the outset, we talked about a contingency that we set aside, and I think we've all had that conversation in each of the budgets. There's a percentage of the construction value that we hold to absorb some of the changes, the new work that will be encountered particularly in it happens in every project, but new or in renovation projects, there are sometimes more unforeseen conditions. So there's a contingency money that's set aside for that. The amount of that contingency and its ability to absorb the impact is something I think we're still evaluating, because right now we have the costs for the work itself and for the new work, but we haven't gotten into the full understanding of what the delay costs may be as well. And so that's an area that we're still evaluating the overall project budgets. It will have an impact in terms of it has to be paid from the project budget. The question is right now is the contingencies. How far do we go with the contingencies on that? And that's until we know the total values of the impacts to the delays. That's the sort of a next step that we'll get to.
Okay, thanks. I hope that answers Liz, or I don't know if anybody else had any comment on that question. Okay, so Jeremy, you're up.
Thank you. Yeah, so I just wanted to actually, my comment is actually on the same topic as the last comment, really. These are all the same topic, but I just wanted to back what Mark and Matthew said, that I think, if and I would just put it this way, if this is the way the city wanted it, if this is the code, then this was always the cost. And so I think so it's sort of irrelevant, because if the city wanted it this way, demanded that it be this way, then we were never going to be able to avoid those additional costs. But Mark, I just wanted to ask you, are you actually able to quantify how much increase in spending is due to the misinterpretation initially of the code, which I'm not blaming you for as a lawyer. I think that happens all the time. Even I get things wrong. I just infrequently as I can, but it happens. So can you quantify that, or is that not possible at this time?
Yeah, I would. These costs that we're presenting are the ones that are associated with that. So there will be other costs that are in the contingency will address, and things that are going to come up during construction that have yet to be quantified yet. But the work we're presenting tonight is the work that's associated with the permitting review. And I'll say it kind of goes both ways. There's aspects that we presented, and that they did see that that Harriman's position on something, and then there were things that they said no, we don't see it that way. So there's sort of that it's not necessarily negotiation. It's, I think, just coming to an understanding of what the expectations of the city are.
Anybody else have a question? Oh, go ahead, Jeff.
Just to opine on what Mark had just said, Jeff with CHA. When the drawings are submitted, the position is by the design team as fully coordinated drawings that they are a permit. It's called a permit set drawings. So I wouldn't say that the drawings, in fact, were not code compliant. I would argue that they were, in fact, code compliant, but the city has, in certain instances, has a different interpretation of the actual code. And like what I said earlier with respect to subcontractor costs being presented to us and vetting it, we did the same for the city's comments, some of which had minimal cost impact, which we were very, very easily to address, and others that had a greater cost impact. And so we look at what alternatives are to address the city's concerns, as well as providing them expert opinions from code consultants, specifically here, fire, life safety, to present our case. But at the end of the day, you're at it's the city's ultimate decision. We also took it as far as up the chain within the city as well. So when we came across challenges with the permit reviewer, we had to ask for help from people up the chain to help us navigate and deal with these issues in a timely manner. So that there's more to it that transpires there's more detail, but that from a high level, that's what transpired here for all three projects.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. All right, I'll move to the next one. And that's Presumpscot. And Presumpscot is a little bit different in some respect. This was driven, again, as part of the permitting review, but the code changed in the middle of last year. So in particular, the energy code, the International Energy Conservation Code, that was updated to, in Portland's case, it's what we refer to as a stretch code. It's the 2021 IECC. And so that modified the design for Presumpscot to incorporate additional features. One of the largest was around the electrical components. And you can see that's a big number on the list here. So we have general conditions, which Laura explained, that's the contractor's cost. We have demolition, so some additional removal of some items. We have some concrete slab repair, and that's where, for instance, if we had to add some under slab utilities, we would have to cut out the slab. That would be in the demo, and then we have to actually repair the slab. That's concrete. That would be in this next line item. We've got some rigid insulation at the foundation. Again, that's a direct response to increased insulation required because of the energy code. We've got tile changes, which that have to do with the finishes in the toilet rooms, and that's another similar to Longfellow and Reiche. We have plumbing and toilet room changes because of the interpretation of that. Toilet accessories, again, similar to the conversation at Longfellow and Reiche. Plumbing, similarly. But the electrical one is the big one because what the new energy code requires is in the attempt to eliminate standby electrical losses in branch circuits in rooms. They require that that a portion of the outlets in a room are controlled through vacancy sensing, so that if there's no one in a room, they actually cut power to some of these outlets, and so you don't have ghost loads and things like that that actually reduce energy, or they would increase in energy consumption without them. So that's part of the requirement. So the separation of outlets in those rooms starts to increase costs substantially in existing spaces. It's a little different in new construction where you can, but even then it's a little bit of a work, but particularly in spaces in existing buildings, it becomes more costly. So that number is driven up a little bit. And then there's a markup, and CHA can speak a little bit more about this markup, but that's the contractors entitled to, or in subcontractors and the contractor are entitled to a markup to accommodate their efforts to supervise the work as well, and there are limits in the contract on how much that markup can be on changes, and so, but that's what that last line item is.
Mark, can I just ask a question? I see Luke put a question to you in the chat asking if you could remind us what year energy code the other projects are being held to.
Yeah, so the previous version of the energy code, I want to say, was 2015 and not the 2021. So I see Lisa shaking her head because that's what we're using still in other communities, and they haven't caught up to the 2021. But every 3 years, the Code Council publishes updates to it, and communities or jurisdictions either adopt the latest one, or they oftentimes defer. They don't necessarily always use the latest code.
Luke has followed up in the chat, Mark, with an additional question about whether there's an analysis done on how long it would take to pay back some of those measures. And Luke, that analysis was not done. These were direct requirements of the code that we had to meet in order to obtain the permit.
It looks like, I'm sorry, do you prefer Matt or Matthew?
It doesn't matter.
Okay, Matthew has a question here. Go ahead.
Yeah, I had a question about the electrical outlets and them switching off. You said that there were some outlets that you didn't do the whole room all at once.
The code. Oh, I'm sorry, Matthew. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, it seems silly that, or it seemed like it would be an option if the school decided that it worked for them to have all of the outlets attached to the occupancy sensor.
Yeah, the code doesn't require all, and there's maybe reasons why you wouldn't necessarily want all. So, for instance, if you've got an aquarium with a pump in it, or a terrarium or something to that effect, there may be reasons why you don't want every outlet in the room off on a vacancy sensor. So the code doesn't require all outlets to be switched in that fashion. All right. I think so. Again, that is the what we know for costs at this time. As one of the slides, and as we've talked about, as these costs come in, as we get the information, we ask for additional information, we vet that, and we see the impacts to the projects, and we're working to get a more complete picture of what those costs are as fast as we can, so that all of you and the District Advisory Building Committee and the administration can all evaluate, the question of, what's paying for the additional costs? Do we have enough to cover it in the contingency line items? And what does that mean for some of those alternates that were talked about at the design part of the process? So all that is information that we're trying to get compiled as fast as we can in order to present it to everyone to be able to start the conversation on the next steps of that. So that's the substance of the conversation. I'll pause for a minute before we move to just the next meeting dates here before, and see if there's any other comments by anyone or questions.
Maybe can I just add a little bit to that last point? So we're in the process of getting the final numbers from Reiche, correct?
That's right.
And so the plan would be for us to be able to bring to the District Building Advisory Committee the full picture of what the total cost looks like, and sort of have that evaluated against the contingency and additional funding that is still available to determine, what the implications are. Is it all within the contingency? Does it eat into any of the resources that are available for alternates? And then should any reductions in scope result from that, then come back to this group to help to parse through what those scope reductions would imply for each of the buildings, before a decision is made on how to allocate the resources for that. So I just wanted to go into a little bit more detail. I don't know if I got that right. So Mark or, Steve or anyone from the team, help if there's more that should be said.
I will just clarify, Javier, that we are in construction right now. Submittals, materials have been ordered. They're in manufacturing. Presumpscot's going to be going vertical soon. Steel, I think, in the next 2 weeks, right, Laura? So the opportunity to reduce scope on the hard cost, the actual construction and in the field is fairly well past. So if you were speaking to other type of scope reduction,
well, I think that's what I want, you guys to expand on. What does that mean? if these costs are in excess of what the contingency can absorb, and if there is no other, if there's no additional money to do this, which there isn't, where would this come from?
Yeah, and yeah, absolutely, Javier. And I think you kind of outlined it clearly. And to Jeff's point, Jeff's right on that the scope reductions that we're talking about. It gets extremely difficult at this point to say, okay, well, we're not going to do a portion of the work that the contractor is encumbered. So what we do is we look at the encumbered funds in the budgets of the schools. And so what has been encumbered to date that we don't have any flexibility in terms of, and then what hasn't been spent to date or encumbered to date. And then we look at, is it possible to defer or reduce those line items in the budget in order to compensate for some of these additional costs? That I think is the next level of conversation that we want to have after we understand what the magnitude of the overall costs are.
Superintendent, did you need to follow up on that at all, or can I ask another question? Okay. Just going along that a little further, Mark, there's a question in the chat from Liz asking, is the analysis regarding contingency coverage of Newark going to be school by school or all 3 schools as a whole, or is that not clear yet?
I think right now what we have done is, as I think everyone knows, we have budgets built for each project. Those projects or those project budgets are what we've kind of that they were originally set up way back before we even came in involved in it, and they were helped to determine what the overall BFOF bond amount was going to be. The bond amount is one lump sum, and so so right now I think what we are doing is, and what we will analyze is the impact of each of those individual budgets, and then we'll have to look at and it's in a similar way that we looked at Reiche and Presumpscot in the shifting of funds from one to another. That certainly is a vehicle for doing it, but we haven't. We will analyze them individually and look at that collectively, I think, as a project, as a total BFOF project. So a little bit of both, I guess. That's.
Questions or comments?
All right. And lastly, the dates for our next meetings we have for the month of February, February 17th for the DABC, and then for this group on February 24th. And so I believe those are the 3rd and 4th weeks in February. So I guess the good news is that hopefully it'll be warmer weather and longer days by then. And we'll have more information for all of you.
All right. Oh, go ahead, Chair Victor.
I just want to just make sure to say, I know it's hard to see cost increases, and we will see more as at our next meeting. When we look at the implications of the delay as a result of the time that it took to get the permits, but we will get these projects done, and we will do them well. We've encountered a lot of hurdles along our way, and we're 110% committed to getting these projects done well. So it will take this full team, and I'm really optimistic. Just even if you ever hold out doubt, go see Lyseth if you haven't yet, and it's glorious. It's a completely different school environment. So we're going to get there with all 3 of these projects as well. So just wanted to make sure to get that in. And with the LISEF project, we had hurdles along the way as well. But we'll get it done in the end for sure.
Thank you, Chair. I was exactly holding that image of doing the tour of LISEF this fall. So holding that, all three of these schools are going to get done, and I'm also confident in that. And there have been certainly frustrations along the way, but I know we're all going to get these schools done. So appreciate everyone's time being here tonight. Is there anything else, Superintendent, that you wanted to say before we wrap up? No? Okay. I appreciate everybody's time and really excited to have this group to work together to ensure we get all three of the schools done. I'm glad we're working as a team together. And do I have to get a motion to adjourn the meeting, Chair Figdor? Anyone want to move that we end our meeting? No, we can stay. Can I do it?
I think someone else. I saw Emily Hurley. She moved.
Yay! Thank you, Emily. And I don't know if we need to do a second. Second, great. So then just with a show of hands, if everyone can just vote for us to adjourn at 7:08 tonight. Thank you so much, and I'll see everybody next month. I know we put the date out there, right? Was it the 24th? February 24th. Thanks, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.